Hey there, water people. Welcome to another episode of the Waterpeople Podcast. His name is synonymous with being a waterman, Mark Healey. Whether chasing big waves, spearfishing, working as a Hollywood stuntman, or spending extended amounts of time underwater, Mark's become a mainstay across several disciplines of heavy water. As a surfer, he now mostly travels outside the confines of contest surfing. But in 2009, he won the XXL Tube of the Year award, and in 2010, he won a stacked final at the Todos Santos big wave event that included Shane Dorian, Twiggy, and Ramon Navarro. Mark's also used his finely honed free-diving skills to further scientific shark tagging studies. But lots of people chase big waves, and many more free-dive with reckless abandon. But Mark's made a career out of confronting discomfort consistently, both on land and in the water. Mark's staying power as a waterman is rooted in his philosophical approach to risk-taking. He has so much to share and teach about feeling alive and how to shake up a life too entrenched in comfort.
Yeah, that's right. Welcome, everybody. It's really neat to be able to share a moment with Mark Healey and then to share it with you all. It makes me just think back to really the first time I saw Mark, and it's definitely set the tone for how I've encountered him and how I basically view him ever since. And it was in the mid-90s, I think it was the season of 94 into 95, where it was the amazing year of Ocky's comeback and getting to, I think it was either the semi-finals or the final of the Pipe Masters, when he was just absolutely ripped and punching out like 1,000 sit-ups in a session with Joel Fitzgerald at Rocky Point, and then running along the beach all the way in the deepest gnarly soft sand that is in Hawaii.
Was that the Machado Slater high five year?
It was, exactly. It was the same year where Rob and Kelly had that moment in one of those semi-finals as well. So a very special year there, and it was actually my first encounter of the North Shore. And I was 14 years old and managed to scrounge up a ticket to get there, and was sleeping on the floor of some little rat pit behind Sunset Beach and living on 70-cent chocolate muffins. And anyway, there was one day where I went down to Pipeline with a 7.2 under my arm and squeaky little voice like, oh, you know, it looks pretty sick out there. And little did I know that it was actually bombing second reef, a few third reefers, and I managed to scratch my way out and get into the lineup. Remarkably, within 5 minutes, a wave came my way, and it was gifted to me by Strider Wozlewski, who was riding for Quicksilver at the time, was a big shot pipe guy and stuff. And I got a wave, got completely blown up on first reef, popped up, absolutely terrified, and couldn't believe my luck that I just popped up and I wasn't stuffed into some sort of cave or, knocked out even. And right then when I popped up, in front of me is this tiny little grommet decked out in fluoro yellow, mid-90s, just classic rusty outfit, and this tiny little red-headed grom streaking through an absolute bomb that had capped a little on second reef and then just flared up on first reef. And that grommet was Mark Healey. And the entire lineup was screaming for him because they couldn't believe this little dude was standing in such a big barrel and just ruling it so comfortable. And I remember just watching him fly straight past me and make it to the channel and get the hero's welcome. And I just got washed up on the beach. And it was just amazing to see that he was a kid who looked like he was not even 10, and I'm 14, and I'm floundering, and he's just ruling. And so ever since, I keep getting these moments, these glimpses of his comfortability and his skill in heavy water situations. This conversation really brought to light for me what a remarkable mind as well. Not just his physical abilities in the ocean, but a great way of reflecting on it, reflecting on the lessons learned, and how all of those moments that you think are just happening in the ocean and you leave them behind are actually tied into your everyday life on land, the relationships you have with the people around you, and that this seemingly selfish pursuit of big wave riding and diving and mostly being alone in these situations is more intricate than that. So here we go.
The Waterpeople Podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Sanuk. They craft the comfiest footwear around and have been advocates for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades. Thanks, Sanuk, for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com. Thanks also to Gary McNeil Concepts for their support in making the podcast possible. Gary McNeil shapes some of the quirkiest boards around and is constantly innovating with new board materials like hemp and flax to reduce the petrochemical footprint of his boards. Learn more at garymcneilconcepts.com.au.
So, Mark, thanks for sitting down for this, man. I just want to jump straight in here and ask you, as one of the world's leading big wave surfers and freedivers, you would have been in a lot of extreme situations in the ocean. Is there any one moment that stands out more than any other where you feel like you were never the same afterwards?
Yeah, I think I've got a handful of them probably. It's kind of one of those things I feel like even for somebody like me that's been so close to the water, in the water so much from a young age, it's kind of like a relationship. It needs to get maintained sometimes. And the intervals at which that maintenance time comes can vary. But there's definitely reckoning points. And a large part of that, I think, is when you spend so much time in the ocean, the odds of things happening that are low odd type of occurrences are going to end up happening to you or around you. Like something can go bad, or you can get stuck in a spot where you're like, you know, the whole facade of safety is completely gone and you feel like the last person on earth, and you're like, oh shit, like this is real right now, and it's just me. We'll see how this one goes. It could go one way or the other. I think my biggest ones for sure was just, you know, the loss of close friends that you know very well, great humans that would do superhuman things, like the last person on earth you ever think that would happen to, and seeing that happen. So, you know, there's Malik at Pipeline. That was my first real up-close experience with it. You know, there's Jay Moriarty, who is a good friend, and I got him into diving over here in Hawaii. We'd always dive a ton when he'd come and visit, and then he had that diving accident and passed away. And Jay was one of those guys, like, best person ever, and just fearless and competent, and that happened to him. And then Malik, same kind of guy. That happened, you know, I ended up picking him up off the bottom at Pipeline and tried to get him in, but it was too late. And that whole thing with Malik started changing my perspective on things, because I've always been like, you know, I accept the risk that's involved. I know it's risky, but I always had this large amount of confidence in the water. I'm like, yeah, I know what's at play, and if it doesn't go my way, that's the way it is. I know the rules of this playing field I'm stepping into, and I'm at peace with that, right? But I think with Malik, because, you know, knowing his brother and his brother being there at the time, and then helping throughout the process with, you know, even, you know, the funeral and everything, and seeing it start to finish made me realize, like, that I have more responsibility than just myself, you know. And I'm the kind of person, like, yeah, I'll drive fast or do whatever if I'm alone in the car, but if there's anybody else in the car, I drive like a grandma, because I don't feel like it's responsible for me to take risk on somebody else's behalf. You know, I think everybody should make their own decision on the amount of risk that they take, but then that coming front and center in my face, that whatever decisions you make have a giant effect on the other people around you, that really made me think about it. I'm like, okay, you know, I have a responsibility to the people who care about me to make sure I, you know, don't do something to get myself killed. And it was really strange when we ended up doing the paddle out for Malik and everything. It was 6 to 8 foot day at Pipeline, real windy and messy. We do the ceremony, and we're coming in, and this like 8-footer just jacks up, and I just whip around and go, end up eating shit and slamming so hard on the bottom, like messed up my foot for like months. So I'm like, it's already in my head, then that happens to me, and I'm like limping up the beach. I'm like, what's going on here? And I was kind of out from that injury for a while, and it really makes you reflect on like, what is your actual true motivations for doing what you do? Is it an ego thing? Is it because you're celebrated for that? Is it because it's the way you think you're valuable to people in the world? Are you that guy? Do you need to be that guy all the time to still be yourself? And so those are all hard things that I had to honestly really look at and figure out what my true motivations were. And then this big, one of those giant swells popped up in Fiji not too long after. And I went down, and it was the first time I've ever gone for a big swell or something. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to even catch a wave. I'm not going to do anything that I'm not feeling. The first time ever I thought that way. And went out there and sat in the lineup for a while, and the hunger came back. It was there, and I was like, wow, okay, that was interesting, because I didn't know which way it was going to go. And I really came into it as like an open slate. And I was like, yes, okay, this is natural to me. This is what I love to do. I'm going to keep doing it for sure. And then, you're going good again for a while. Then that interval of reassessing your relationship happens again. It's with this passing of Sion. Flew everybody and his wife over and helped go retrieve him from California, bring him back home. And that got me diving back into that headspace of like, wow, this affects a lot more people than just yourself. And so I kind of had to go through that process again, where I tried to just go out with a clean slate and not put any pressure on myself whatsoever. And again, I loved it again. And both of those times, I think I had some of my best big wave sessions I've ever had, which is strange. And I think a lot of it is because I wasn't putting pressure on myself, and I was just doing and surfing exactly how I felt. Like, how you always surf better when you don't care about getting the best wave of the day or something. You're just purely doing it as an expression. I'm not an artist. I'm not a singer. I can't that's like a physical manifestation of like how you feel and who you are at that time. So I think it was really good. It helped me grow in more ways than one, but those definitely stick out as my biggest challenges. And it made me appreciate what I get from the ocean even more, because I realized just how deep that need was for me, despite everything that was happening. So it was really interesting.
Wow, Mark, thanks for sharing that. That's all such real stuff. And it makes me wonder, are you an oddball in that world? Like, are all big wave surfers asking themselves these kind of difficult questions about, motivation and safety and responsibility? Is it really common?
I think some of the older guys that are around in the big wave kind of stuff have. I think a clear outcome of that is like more focus on collective safety and training and planning is definitely a byproduct of that. Like with the BRAG, the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group thing that came out of the passing of Sion, it's been amazing. Cole Christensen and Danilo organized the first thing in his barn down in Waialua, and that was just to get a small group of surfers CPR certified. Because they're like, shit, guys aren't even current on CPR certs. And that's grown a ton over the years, and now it's a big thing that happens every year, and there's so many people who've had their lives saved because of this training around the world. Every year there's people walking this earth that wouldn't be alive otherwise. So that's been a super positive outcome from the whole thing. But yeah, it's hard shit to face, and it's hard to be honest with yourself. And I think the biggest part of that is probably questioning how other people view you and what your worth is to them. And I think it's hard to have the confidence to do that, to be like, you know what, I can scrap this whole persona and pick up and start from scratch. You know, you have to kind of have that foundation to be able to honestly reflect, I think. And so I don't know if everybody does it, but that's why a lot of people fall out of it. You'll see them come and go from that whole big wave world, you know, within a 3-year period. But the blessing and the curse of having more safety is, you know, you're saving more people, but then with the vest, with the presence of qualified people on skis to rescue, it kind of puts off that questioning for some people, and I wonder about that sometimes.
Man, it's so refreshing to hear you speak about this world that a lot of surfers and non-surfers probably think is just a culture of adrenaline and testosterone.
I had to think about it a lot. But I think another thing, too, that's a big factor is because you're pushing yourself so far and you're constantly at this edge of what you think is possible or what other people in general know is possible, there's a certain amount of blind confidence that you have to do it, to be totally honest. And a certain amount of blind confidence that you have to have when things go bad, just like, I got this, just chill out, you got this. I think a lot of people feel like they can lose that confidence if they start asking those questions to themselves. You know, that mental mechanism of just like, fuck it, I got it, no matter what. It's fragile. And I think a lot of people know it's fragile, so they don't want to rock that boat when it's there.
Well, can you give me an example of that happening? You know, where you falter on that line of, yeah, I got this, and actually I don't know what to do right now?
Yeah, I think it's been times where I've been sick or down. Well, I remember I had just got ciguatera poisoning pretty bad in French Polynesia, and then like a month later, and it was still messing me up pretty bad. I went to swim in Puerto Escondido, and I try to really rely on my instincts a lot with this, and I didn't feel physically like I should have been out. It was pretty big, and I mean, Puerto Escondido, when it's big, is like one of the scariest big wave spots on the earth, you know? Like, you get lit up, you get held in the same spot, really tough to get in. You're usually not getting picked up by a jet ski. And I just remember being out, it was like 15, 18 feet, and just being like, you're being so stupid right now. You're really forcing this. Like, well, why are you doing this right now? And made it, obviously. But yeah, it definitely didn't feel right. It felt very forced.
Well, then why were you doing it? Is it the fear of missing out?
It's the fear of missing out, for sure. And then I remember, like, I probably did this when I was like 12 years old. I did like a little math on like, okay, there's this many. You could probably make a guesstimate average of how many big rideable swells there's going to be in a year that you could possibly get to, and then multiply that by from now until you're X amount of years old, and you're like, shit, every swell counts, man. I only got so many of these things to surf. There's a lot of things I want to do. So I think that kind of mentality pushed me into a lot of things but that's the thing too, is like I've been rewarded for that mentality a lot. I've had a lot of big wave sessions where I did some of my best stuff that got me to where I am when I was like, holy shit, I slept for 2 hours. I'm not feeling it. I haven't been in this cold water in a 4 mil wetsuit and booties in a year, and I can barely keep my eyes open. And then you're just like, fuck it, I'm sending it on one. And you end up making it, and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like the rational mind doesn't have a place in those situations.
Yeah, like there's a certain part of big wave surfing where the rational mind needs to get put on the shelf.
Yeah.
Or at least there's a certain point, whether it's going to be a 10-second time frame, because no matter how hungry you are, when it's really big and it's a proper wave, there's always a point where most of my survival instincts in my body are saying, don't do this. And you just do the full override and go. And the only way to be successful is 120% commitment, like going all the way. So to help that is like more training and doing more things on the survival aspect of it. So then you can at least deal with that, because you know you're going to have to shut off the logic side at a certain point.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. Kimmy Werner, who I know you've done plenty of diving with, also talks about like flipping your response in critical moments, like literally doing the exact opposite of what your brain is saying to do. And, you know, those moments, I reckon they kind of happen quickly in surfing. You know, like my first experience of dealing with the difference between fear and instincts came when surfing shipsterns in Tasmania a long time ago. And we would be trying to figure out how to ride the wave without seeing any other people having ridden it. And often the rational mind would get in the way when I was looking at boils and steps in the face and, you know, all these strange anomalies in the wave. But there'd be something in my gut that would just say go. And other times perhaps it'd be a perfect wave and there wouldn't be any steps or boils, but something else is saying don't go. So, you know, those sort of wandering moments there where that line is danced. And I'm just wondering, for you, those short little moments, those matter of seconds where you spot an unbroken swell and you have to make a decision, like 120% decision very quickly, is it full of internal chatter for you? You know, like, do you have a full-on conversation in your head when there's a 50-foot wave coming at you?
It took me a while to realize this, which is funny because I've been doing them for so long at that point. You know, I've been diving and free diving and surfing, you know, since I can remember. But I realized, like, with my personality type, I'm good at just trying harder, just grinding, like not taking no for an answer. And I realized I was super attracted to free diving and big wave surfing. And the thing that both of those shared is the only way to get to the higher level of both of them is you have to learn to gain control by letting go, which I never would have understood that concept before. And archery and bow hunting is very much like that too, and that's why I'm so addicted to it, is that at a certain point, it doesn't matter how much grit and how much intelligence you have, the only way to be efficient is by surrendering something. Which, it's a very hard concept for people to understand because they sound so opposite. But it's surrendering and going with that gut instinct at the last second, making a decision. It's surrendering to a feeling of extreme discomfort and wanting to breathe, and melting into that. It's kind of like this saying that they have in the freedive community, that your breath hold doesn't start until your first contraction. So obviously anybody can hold their breath until they start getting that chest heave and tensing up their neck. Anybody can do that. It wasn't a breath hold until that started. Now the battle starts. And the only way to be successful at this battle is to do the exact opposite of what your body wants to do, which is tense up and get fidgety. You have to melt into that. And it's so hard for people to do. Just let go of control at some level and have faith that that's how it's going to work. And in a lot of ways, I really look at those things I do as an extreme and condensed simulation on how to approach other things in life. Because in all of those things, you're trying to control the factors that you can control and not leaving any space for the ones that you can't in your mind, right? So there's external forces at work that I can't do anything about. I'm going to control with what I have, which a lot of times is just your mind. And part of that process of gaining control is by letting go of control. It's really weird, but it's the only way I can really describe it.
So you have all these pretty tweaked pursuits. You know, they take you right to the edge. Do you feel like you're addicted to that experience now? Are you constantly seeking that edge point? I think it's a hard question for people like us to ask ourselves, but is it making life more meaningful for you? And, is it creating a great life full of real moments?
I think it's both, for sure. But I also came to the realization of my other theory is that maybe I'm attracted to those things because I lack discipline in some way. And it's because getting to the point of anything where to get to the highest or your highest level of it, you have to gain control by letting go of control. That really is exactly what people do in meditation. Maybe I don't currently have the discipline to make myself be able to get to this state on my own, and I need an outside force. So I've just referred to those things as my meditation crutch. So it's kind of a meditation for dummies or cheaters.
That's classic. So is it too uncomfortable for you to sit in a room cross-legged?
Yeah, like that's a lot harder. Like I need an external force. Wow. Well, I don't need it. I know I can do that, but it would just take a lot of work,
So does it help make life more meaningful for those around you as well? Because, you were saying earlier, these decisions, they don't just affect us, they affect the people around us. And, the choice we make on a wave is not just affecting us. There are a lot of people who care for us and are connected to us that are affected by those decisions.
I think it is if you focus on the lessons and the takeaway and you bring it with you. I think it's easy to not walk away with those lessons and just walk away with an adrenaline spike and a feeling of accomplishment. And also there's a certain part of it too when you put yourself in very real and present situations where a decision is required. There's no outs. I think I maybe like that as well too, because I'm actively putting myself in a situation that I can't squirm out of. A decision has to be made. Like, for instance, like my mechanism that I've used before is if there's something I've been saying that I want to do, and I know it's going to be hard for me to do it when the situation presents itself, is I'll tell people that I want to do it. Usually I won't say anything, but when I tell somebody else I want to do it, that's because I'm putting the pressure on myself, like, okay, now I told people I gotta fucking do it. Like, I always wanted to ride a bull, and I'll think about things that I want to do, and my goal is to never turn into an old man that says, oh yeah, those stories, like, I wanted to do this, but life, blah, 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 whatever excuses, fill in the blank. So, like, I just want to do that. I think it's really cool, and I'd watch it on TV a bunch, and so I was going on a trip to Mexico with Reef McIntosh and Danny Fuller, and it'd tell those guys something. They'd never let me live it down. So, like, in the airport, I'm like, I'm riding a bull this trip somewhere. They're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, fuck, well, there it goes. I'm doing it.
Latched onto that trick of it.
Yeah. And we ended up doing it. I got destroyed, but...
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What happened? Did it kick you, or did it just...
Well, so we're in Mexico City Airport on our way to Teclomán to go surf Pascuales. So I tell these guys this, and then we go into the little bar by our gate, and what's on the TV screen but, like, the faces of death of Mexican bull riding. And it's all just clips of, open mic bull riding like they'll do in Mexico, like where any jackass like myself can come out of the audience and hop on the back of a beast. And it had this terrible, like, early 90s graphic of blood coming down the screen every time it was a fatality.
Oh, real? Like,
yeah, people are dying.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, man, why did I just tell these guys? And so we had a little break in the swell, and we were asking around, and in the town of Teclomán, they have, like, a full coliseum for rodeo. And it's not a tourist town by any means over there. Like, it's proper mainland Mexico town. And so we're like, okay, we end up going. And there's, like, over 2,000 people at this thing. Like, it was a big...
Were you, like, the three of the only gringos there?
Yes. And we were getting just daggers looking at us. Like, getting so vibed out in there. We were there, and somehow there's this old, like, this guy looked like he was in his 70s, Mexican cowboy guy with giant belt buckle, looked the part, and all these guys that were just looking at us like they wanted to kill us would always come up and shake this guy's hand like he was a well-respected guy. So Fuller, being the great friend that he is, was like, I'm going to ask this guy if I can get you on a bull. And goes like, sign language, bad Spanish. The guy looks back at me, points at me. He's like, yeah, my friend. He's like, okay, puts his hands up, goes down, talks to the guys. You can see them turning around, pointing at me, laughing. Like, they look way too happy about this, right? And right then, like, there's this pack of Mexican kids. They're all like little rascals. And there's one kid who is like the full albino ginger Mexican kid. And he just, you could tell he probably got so picked on all the time. And he looked at me, and all of a sudden, I was like his hero. It's like,
there's no way you're backing out.
No, I was like, dude, I know how it is growing up like that, dude. So all of a sudden, like, he was just wouldn't leave my side, sitting next to me, like, yeah, patting me on the back. His friends were talking trash. He's like yelling back at him, like, my guy, I'll do it, you know. It's like, oh man, here it goes. And so I go down, and I'm in board shorts and slippers, and they're finally like, okay, go up. And I go to the gate, and I'm like, well, these slippers aren't going to do any good. So I take them off, and I turn around. The kid's there with his hands out to hold my slippers for me. I'm like, fuck. And so I get in the gate. So there's the chutes, which the gate opens and the bull runs out. And they have two chutes right next to each other, and the bulls are facing each other. So they always have one guy loaded as the other guy's going out. And the one right across from me was this Mexican guy who was a regular there, like cowboy from the area. And he's in the chute. They open the chute, and this bull takes a hard left, which makes his whole body pendulum right. And then the bull whips out right, which makes him swing around in the opposite direction, right against the bars. And his face hits this bar, and it sounded like somebody hitting a flagpole with a bat. Like, the most disgusting, like, ping and crunch sound. And before the guy fell off the bull, it ran along the gates and hit his head again on the gate. And this guy was down. And I was like, fuck, I think I just watched a guy die. And the guy, people run in and pick him up. And I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, if that guy survives, his life will never be the same.
Yeah.
And so the vibe just gets really dark, and these guys know him and everything. And the guys that got me on this bull, they're just pissed off. I'm looking at all its muscles twitch, and it's pissed. And I don't have my butt down on the bull yet. I got my hand under the rope. I'm just like, fuck, this is bad. Like, their buddy just died.
Yeah.
I'm the clown gringo about to go and do this. This is like not going good. And so I got my feet on the gate, and the guys were just pissed. And they just looked at me and go, uno, and then just opened the gate. So my foot was still on that gate. So automatically this bull's running out, and I'm in the splits. My butt hasn't even touched the thing yet. I'm yanked by the arm out after this bull. So I'm in the air, and as soon as my butt's coming down, the bull's bucking back up. So it just pops me straight in the air, feet over my head. As I'm coming down upside down, the bull's by then bucking back up again, and his tailbone hits me in the back of the head so hard. I've never been hit that hard maybe one other time. Hits me so hard, and I fly back up in the air and land the same way, just across my shoulders and the back of the head. And I hit the ground so hard that way that both of my knees hit the ground. I fold in half and skin both of my knees. And I couldn't see anything, so I was knocked out, but I could move. And I felt guys grabbing at me, and I was like, could hear this like jeering crowd, and I was like, there's no way I'm getting dragged out of here. I'm willing to like get run over by this bull wherever it is. Like, so I'm like fighting these guys off, and I like start breathing, and I can see like a little pinhole of light, and my frame of vision gets bigger and bigger, and I just run and dive through the gate and get back in the crowd. My Reef and Fuller just looking at me like, oh my God, how are you? You're not dead right now. I was like, dude, give me a beer. I need a beer this is going to hurt real bad soon. And we're like, let's just get out of here.
So what was the takeaway from that then? You were saying before
it was stupid.
Yeah.
That I'm an idiot. Yeah. That was the takeaway. But you want to hear a crazy story. So there's a couple of the only other gringos that were there were like 3 guys from Texas that were also surfing. Fast forward like 5 years, I'm at Desert Point, and this blonde surfer guy comes up to me. He's like, I almost died because of you. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, man, I was at that bull riding ring that night, and he's like, that guy who went out before you died, and his friends were mad that you went, and they thought I was you, and they chased us out, and with knives they were going to stab us, and there's like this 12-foot concrete wall around the whole thing. He's like, we jumped it. I don't know how we got over it, but it's the only way we didn't get stabbed to death.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow, that's a curveball.
Not going to do that again.
Later.
So as you get older and hopefully wiser, are you zooming in and refining your pursuits? Like now, is it just diving, bow hunting, and surfing?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, and some snow heli trips and stuff like that. I think the only thing I left on the table was getting into base jumping, which I'm happy to let go of now. I'm pretty happy. I don't feel like I need to prove too much with myself with extreme unnecessary risk for the sake of risk. But I think something that'll probably be even more prevalent than it already is not doing something unless I'm feeling it. Like, I'm there, I'm present, I'm in the mood, and that's kind of a lot of reasons why, I haven't been to Nazare yet, is because I know I'm not going to leave Hawaii during the winter time and go spend a bunch of time over there. So what's going to happen is you're going to go run over there for a swell. You're going to be on the worst jet lag time frame ever, just have traveled for 30 hours and go and put yourself in harm's way in a big way. It's just doing stuff like that I don't need to do anymore. And a lot of it, too, is like some of these big wave events, man. It's like you're going out, no sleep, tons of preparation, not even getting to watch the waves and trying to force 2 good rides in 45 minutes is a tall order, especially for how little it pays, So just being more selective about stuff like that. And it took me a long time to be able to even say that, like to even admit to myself that. But I just think it's a smarter way to go. And honestly, I think I surf better because of it. Because the ones that just don't fit or just aren't right, I still get that FOMO feeling. And then when I get to the next one, I surf better because of it. Because I'm more hungry. I got the fire. And I think that's key. You have to be in it mentally and physically 100% for it to be worthwhile, because your odds of injury or something going bad if you're not go up so much, because it's that one hesitation moment that's going to get you.
Yeah, a lot of sessions in serious water feel like kind of like visiting a type of church or cathedral for me. When a huge set comes out of deep water at any big wave spot, I can't handle just sitting there and doing nothing and saying nothing. I generally let out like a crazy big hoot or a whistle or something, and it just seems so overwhelming in those moments that you're seeing something so beautiful and powerful, let alone, taking off and riding those kind of waves. That's like you're meeting your maker or your creator or some kind of force that is just so much bigger than yourself. And it makes me wonder, how are we going to go? And specifically, how are you going to go as you get older and life is busier with kids and other stuff that you just fill your days with? And those moments, those crazy moments out at sea like that, are happening less and less. Our bodies are getting pretty beat up. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty buckled already. I'm only in my late 30s. Have you got a plan on how to stay happy and healthy and strong enough through all of that?
Just staying active. I've noticed since I've made more of those kind of self-honesty choices, in my decision making when I am out there. I think I'm appreciating it even more. And yeah, just staying busy. I'm gonna have to get more discipline on yoga if I want to get this like lasting. I know that 100%. But yeah, just so many of the things that I do are physical, and it keeps me in good shape. But I don't know. I feel like I appreciate the whole picture a lot more when I'm out in that element now. I think because I know more perspectives about it. And it's funny. It's something that you said in an interview that I've borrowed, but really stuck out to me, which is really cool, is like that whole concept of how this is energy that started as solar winds that's being transferred through the atmosphere into storms and then transferred into liquid. And so this liquid is just a visual manifestation of the power that's around us all the time. You know, it's wind and water moving, but it is energy. It's pretty interesting to think, like, you know, our body's being made up of so much water. Is there some kind of energy transfer that affects you from like a real physical state, whether it's your brain wiring or your body wiring or whatever it is? You're being exposed to a certain kind of energy. And I wonder if part of the feeling you get and take away from it is beyond like the adrenaline and beyond the feeling of accomplishment, but it might actually be something else. I'm pretty fascinated with that. And it's like, to be a part of that energy at one of its most explosive and final moments before it dissipates into sound energy is pretty interesting. It's something unique that I don't know anything else that we do as humans on the world where you could experience that. Mm. And I think I like some of these basic things that have elements that are still simple, like paddling, big wave surfing, or holding your breath underwater, because I also like the idea of connecting to the past and like the ancestors before us, what their experience was like on Earth. And you're kind of experiencing that. That's pretty nuts and bolts to go in the ocean and without the help of a lot of technology, find a way to be a part of that energy and live with that energy and be accepted in that world. You can kind of compare your experience going back thousands of years with other people. And I think if you can push that relationship, you're actually doing hopefully something good for humankind in general in developing that relationship. It's just trying to melt into it all and be a part of it. You know, be a part of something that's a lot bigger than just you. A lot of the white noise and the bullshit really fades away. And I feel sorry for people who don't get to experience that, you know. I always think it must be like an alcoholic that doesn't know what it feels like to feel normal. Like their good day is everybody else's shittest feeling day of the year when they have a flu. So they've lost perspective of what it really feels like. They got to get out of that and go through those withdrawals to be like, oh, this is what it feels like to just be me. And I think a lot of people don't get these experiences for a reference point to know what it's like to be a human, just to be a human, right? They're living in this grind, and I don't think everybody needs to do it all the time. But I just say the same way with going and getting your food. Like, I know not everybody has the access or the time, which that's kind of a cop-out too, because you can always make time. But I think you need to do it just to have perspective to judge everything else in life by. And I liken it to, if you're on like Death Valley, you know, it's a giant, just flat to the horizon as far as you can see. It's impossible to gauge distance unless you have something for reference. So if you put in the middle of Death Valley one telephone pole, your ability to gauge distance has completely changed, because you know roughly how big a telephone pole is, and you can tell how big or small that telephone pole is and get an idea of how far away it is, and you create a spatial awareness. And I think these raw human experiences gives you spatial awareness to navigate life. You have some kind of guiding star,
Wow, man, that's a super grounded, though really big picture perspective to have gleaned from your experiences.
And just looking at more of the details, and like I said, how I appreciate those days even more now, it's because I'm aware of more of the little details. And I always thought, like, if I could look at just being out in the ocean one day the same way the Japanese look at the process of making tea. You make a cup of tea here, you drink it. The Japanese are like, it came from here, you go through this giant, it becomes something profound. And there's so many factors and things to look at and things that I don't even know about yet that are going to always play into my overall experience to make that special. Like, it's exciting for me to just keep finding out all these other things I can appreciate and all these ingredients around me. And you notice, like, older people do that. They really slow down and appreciate. Like, they're fine to just go walk into the backyard and hang out for a little while. And I don't necessarily think that's just because they're getting slow in the body or the brain. I think it's because they've learned through time to appreciate the things around you that you've overlooked.
Thanks to Mark for his candor and humor. You can learn more about Mark via markhealeywaterman.com or on Instagram at HealeyWaterOps. That's at HealeyWaterOPS. Special thanks always to our sound engineer, Shannon Soul Carroll. You can find his music via shannonsoulcarroll.bandcamp.com. Thanks also to the Band of Frequencies for providing the music for this episode. We'll put a link in the show notes for this episode on our website so you can hear more from them and from Shannon. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my partner, Dave Rastovich, thank you so much for making the time to listen with us. We'll be continuing the conversation on Instagram, where we're at Waterpeople Podcast. You can find show notes and links from each episode on our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com.